conversations that aren't quite one-on-one and aren't quite, aren't quite the normal sort of program that we would be able to do in person. So we really appreciate being able to have the opportunity. So I'm going to just share my screen and let me get my slides ready. The big thing here being is that they do have, hold on, there we go. Actually, I'll share it and then I'm going to go ahead and there we go. And present. So does everybody see a big blue screen basically, but not a bad blue screen? It's got the, okay, great. Anybody who's at least a little familiar with older computers will know that sometimes a blue screen is not a good thing to be able to see, but this I like to think is a good blue screen. So this is just gonna go through a couple topics that I thought would be kind of helpful. And then what it sort of came up in the earlier conversation was some of the basic stuff, which I think maybe would be, maybe we'll sort of wrap up with that because it actually does tie into the last topic. So first, what I think we'll do is hop into some of the new things that we're providing in terms of online services. So 2020, right? What a year. However, it did provide some silver linings for us in terms of being able to pivot and have more innovative services that are available to people remotely while the library has been closed. We did reopen for in-building pickup and computer usage in September. And then obviously due to the rising numbers in December, we ended up closing the library again. So right now we're still in a holding pattern of having Windows service for the physical library, but we have been able to sort of turn out some of our resources onto online components, which I'm hoping some people will find interesting. I sort of focused on the fun stuff that we've added, but there are definitely a lot of other online resources that are available, which I'm happy to talk about if anybody wants to go through them once we kind of go through the slides. So starting with the new stuff that we've added in 2020, shortly after the shutdown because of COVID, were three sort of major ones. One's called Acorn TV, the other one's called Creative Bug, and the last one is actually run through the state. It's a more robust career prep system called Peterson's Career Prep. So let's just get into it. I tried to start with the one that is probably been the most popular, which is Acorn TV. Acorn TV is unlimited access to what they call the best in British TV and film, but I would definitely say there's a lot of really good stuff on there. There's a lot of things that have moved to streaming only if people are familiar with Netflix or Hulu, and Acorn TV is actually very similar. They're basically akin to BBC broadcasts, but they are not as delayed as they might have been if you didn't have, access to BBC America, for example. They sort of go direct to Acorn TV and then you have access to them. A good example being Dead Weather Fell, which is the middle one that's mentioned there. Doc Martin is another one, and one of my dad's favorites is Midsummer Murders, so I had to give a shout out to Midsummer Murders in there. If anybody's into British TV, it's definitely a pretty robust selection. If you're familiar with BritBox, which is a paid-for subscription, it's very similar to that. And so there's some differences, but obviously the big one being is that this one you don't have to pay for. The library pays for it. So basically, why don't I'm just going to go in and check it out. Can everybody see the screen that says RB Digital now? Okay, cool. It is going to ask me to log in. It's got an interesting platform because there is a paid for version for Acorn TV, but when you log in through the library website, and it's on the subject guide, which I'll show you in a minute too, you'll be able to see a bunch of options. So I'm just going to start with clicking on any old thing. You can also go to the sign in option in the corner here. And then if you do that and go to checkout, it's going to do the same thing, ask you to log in. I'm only mentioning this because this is a little bit more complicated than some of the other options because it's got a two-factor pathway to get it logged in. So as I said, it reminds you unlimited access for everything in Acorn TV for 7 days. So you have a week. Unlike other online resources, if people are familiar with them, like Hoopla or Canopy, which is another film streaming service that we provide, you have only a certain number of credits per month. Acorn TV, you can watch as much as you would like and within those 7 days. So if you want to binge all 18 seasons that are available of Midsummer Murders, for example, you could do that. So we'll just take Doc Martin because I started watching that the other day. This is logged in on my account now. And basically all you do is choose something that you're interested in. And it's just loading. It'll show you the number of series you can play from the start, resume where you were, move on to a different episode if you wanted to, for example. And then, you know, also I've heard some people have had good luck with this, being able to screencast it to their television if you happen to have a smart TV, or if you have a Roku or something like that, a device that lets you do that through the device. You should be able to add Acorn TV and log in that way. If not, you can always obviously use your laptop to be able to watch any of these services.
Somebody has a question. Can you perhaps go to the main library website and show where to find these things and log in?
Yes, that's a great question. I'm glad I left all the pages open. So let's start from the home page. If you're here, there's 2 ways to get into all of these. I'm going to show you the one that's maybe a little bit more intuitive if you're not 100% sure what you're looking for, which is the subject guide, which is right here on the quick links. And you'll also see it up here in the services drop-down menu. If you go to services, over here to e-resources, there's the subject guide, and the other one, which is the whole kit and caboodle together on the A and Z list. So the A and Z list can be helpful if you know what you want and you just want to, you know, scroll down to it. Subject guide, I find to be helpful if you sort of know generally the thing that you're looking for. For example, we're going to talk about movies and TV in a little bit. And it has all of the things that I'm going to mention in one spot together, so you don't have to search around for them. Acorn TV being the one that we just talked about. And then all you do is click on that link, brings you to that same first page that we were on earlier when I was signing in. Obviously, if you don't have an account already set up, it's pretty easy. You just go up here to register, and then it's going to ask for you to create an account, username and a password, and then the library card number. That's how they know that you're accessing it through the library, of course, and that you are, you are interested in this thing and you don't want to pay for it, more importantly, because the library pays for it through this portal. Looks like Sally has a question. Sally, I think you're muted.
Could you, Lauren, take one step backward? If you have trouble with your password, how do you reset the password or do whatever is necessary to get in the beginning?
Oh, sure. You mean for just your library account in general?
Right.
Yeah.
You have to access that, right?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So if we go back to the home page, actually anywhere you're on the website, subject guide, anything that has this and has the logo in the corner here, you should see this option that says My Account up here on the top. If you click on My Account and then go to Forgot Your Password, it's going to ask for your library card number. And then what it'll do is send an email to the email account that you have on file to ask you to reset the password. If you think that your email address is out of date, like maybe you switched from using Hotmail to Yahoo or Yahoo to Gmail or something, or you don't remember your email password either, that. Unfortunately, we can't help with the email password part, but we can help with the library card password reset if you were to call the library. And the phone number is down at the bottom of every page. This is the main line here. You can call, ask for get to the reference desk, and then we're able to log in on the back end and change your password for you.
That's good to know.
Good, I'm glad. Did I see was there another question or? Okay, great. Let's looks like it's been handled, or we addressed it. While we're at it, would it be helpful to sort of go through I was thinking we do this at the end, but maybe we'll start with it, is how to request books right now while we're close to the public. Okay, yeah, so let's do that. Generally speaking, I will go to the catalog button that's at the top right here. It's just a little bit easier if you know you're going to search for a bunch of things. You can also put your search in down below in this line. It also gives you an option to search the website if you were looking for something specific, like the One Book, One Belmont events that are happening in March, for example. But if we go to catalog here, and I'm actually going to use one of the titles that we're using for the April One Book, One Belmont content, and search for the book. Same as you normally would. You can also call the reference desk and we can do this part for you too if that's easier. Probably there's sort of two options. It's pretty similar to normal times, honestly. The only difference is the pickup when you're at the building. So right now we are having window service, so people aren't coming into the building. But if you were to request an item that's coming from another library, it would go through the normal process where that library takes it off of their shelf, puts it into a bin, sends it to a central sorting location, and then sends it to us. And then as soon as you get an email saying that or a phone call, because some people I know get phone calls for their holds pickup, you can come to the library during pickup hours. If it's an item, for example, like this one, and because I'm in the building, it knows that I'm on a Belmont. It knows that I'm in Belmont, so it lists the Belmont items first, which is kind of handy. But if you see that there's a Belmont item that's marked as available in the status here, you can definitely put in a hold as you normally would, which would just be request. And I'm going to put in my catch-all card that I use for official library business and the password there. It's going to ask, where do you want to pick it up? I'm in Belmont, obviously, so I would like to pick it up at Belmont. You can have the item sent somewhere else, but if it's a Belmont item that is marked as available, your odds are that you'll get it much faster if you come and pick it up at Belmont versus having it sent to Watertown. Usually adds a couple of days. And then just hit submit. And that'll tell you, that's great.
How can we have the same thing? This is for physical books, but is there a system just from where you're at where we can get something online?
Absolutely.
Download. Could you show us that?
So why don't we skip ahead? I'm going to go back to my slides real quick. And we'll sort of skip around a little bit. There's sort of two main systems that we use, and we actually added some for Belmont patrons only during the shutdown. It's been a little helpful to increase the number of copies that are available for Belmont residents. So one is called Overdrive. Some people might also know it as Libby. They're one in the same collection, the same collection. Basically, Overdrive is the way we refer to it more generally because it was sort of the name when it first started. And Libby is the sort of new, a little bit more user-friendly app that they created to be able to access these ebooks and audiobooks on your phone, tablet, that sort of thing, anything that uses an app. So it's a little bit more user-friendly than the Overdrive app is, but they access the exact same collection. So there's, like I said, a couple of things. One is that there are increased copies that we've added that are just for Belmont patrons. And then the other one, which I'm going to click through right now, is the Lucky Day collection, which we really built up in the last probably 6 to 9 months. So if it recognizes that I'm logged in on the computer. You would see the same thing if you were on a mobile device, like your phone or your iPad or something, where the first thing you'll see once you log in with your library card is this available now. It's your Lucky Day collection, which basically is like speed reads. If anybody's familiar with the books when you thought, oh man, there's a really long hold list on this book that I really wanted to read. And then you happen to come into the library that day and there happens to be a copy sitting on the shelf. It's because they don't take holds. So they just get to sit there for that person it's their lucky day, and they get to come in and pick the book up off of the shelf. This is the exact same concept. It's just with electronic books, books through Overdrive. So any of these titles are currently available that you would be able to check out right here and now. For example, A Promised Land, which would be the newest Barack Obama memoir that he wrote in, what was that, November. Last time I checked, it had like 500 holds on it throughout the network for the print copy. And I think that the hold list is a lot longer for the ebook too, because there's fewer copies available. But it happens that there was one sitting right here. So if somebody wanted to swoop in and grab that and start reading it, bypassing all of those holds because you just happen to be in the right place at the right time and you're a Belmont resident, then all the more power to you. And you can just go ahead, and click on it.
And how long do you have to read it?
So you can set that up in your settings. I'll show you guys how to do that too. It's really handy. It defaults to, I think, 2 weeks when you first set it up, but you can extend it to 3 weeks for ebooks and audiobooks. Magazines, I think, only go to 2. There is a magazine collection as well. And there are videos as well. And actually a pretty significant number of feature films, which I was not previously aware of. So if I were to borrow this one, and I promise I'll return it if somebody is really itching to read this particular one. It says borrow for 4. Sorry, Lucky Days. I apologize. Lucky Days will only let you borrow for 2 weeks. So it's much like the speed reads where you get 2 weeks with the book. It's not extendable. But if you were going for a different ebook that we happen to have that's not in the Lucky Day collection, you would be able to choose up to 3 weeks for the book to be borrowed. And then you would just click borrow for 14 days in this case. And then you would download it or read it on the device.
I have a question from a person. Somebody's asked, is there 2 questions. The first one, is there any way to download books from whatever, Hoopla or another, onto a Kindle? And that you can answer, I would say, fairly fast. But the other one is that a person here at some point got their account had a notice that their card expired. So that person is asking what to do.
And is it already expired? I'm sorry, I saw the chat, but
it's on the chat.
Oh, it will expire in July. So let's start with the Hoopla one first, and then we'll come back to the account question. So Hoopla, unfortunately, no, is not available for a Kindle Paperwhite, an e-reader only. Hoopla is app-based. That's how they control the number of licenses that are being used. So if you have a Kindle Fire that lets you play games on it and has other apps on it, then you would be able to download Hoopla onto that device, but you can't access it on a Kindle Paperwhite. Does that help or make sense to Miriam?
Yes, that answers the question.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's unfortunate because there's a lot of, what the beauty of Hoopla is that you can have, there's no waiting for the items, but sadly that's its one limitation, is they don't have the same relationship with Amazon and their proprietary platform as Overdrive does, because Overdrive is sort of the first person on the market.
Do people have to download an app for Overdrive, or we just click on the button at the library, on the library website?
You're actually fine doing it either way. Truth be told, if you downloaded the Libby app, it's a little bit more intuitive. The only limitation with the Libby app currently is that it does not allow for the streaming video content. But in terms of books and audiobooks, you would be able to access it, and it's a little bit more user-friendly. it usually picks up on where you're located. So if you're in Belmont, it says, oh, you're probably a Minuteman Library patron, and then just asks for your card automatically, you know, rather than asking you to go through a couple extra steps to get to that point.
Thank you.
No problem. Right, so for the account notice, yeah. So if your card will expire in July, you should get another automatic notice that will say, you know, your card is due to expire shortly. And then you can just, I mean, ideally by July, we will be in a much different sort of looking world in a lot of ways, in which case my hope is that you'll be able to walk into the library whenever we're open and just renew the card. But if you needed to, for whatever reason, especially if it's a comfort factor, which is completely understandable, you should be able to also call the circulation desk and they would be able to renew it over the phone for you as well. They just usually want to confirm your information, you know, that you're still at the same address, we have the right email address, all that sort of stuff, and then they'll renew it for you as well. And I think if we go back to normal renewals, we'll be looking at a 3-year renewal, so you wouldn't have to worry about it for another 3 years. Okay. So let's go, we'll scoot back to ebooks. That was sort of the overview of Overdrive and Libby for the Lucky Day collection. Actually, you know what? Why don't we look at the rest of it though, just so you have a sense of some of the other options that are available. Minuteman spends a lot of time making various collections available, including, as I mentioned earlier, magazines. So what's really cool actually is RB Digital, that was the company that owns Acorn TV. They still have the Acorn TV component, but they actually sold all of their magazine rights to Overdrive, which we've now added. So there's something akin to, in total, about, like, this just happens to be some of the things that they're highlighting in this collection. But if you were to also go up here to magazines up at the top, I think it was an extra 3,000 titles or something like that, all of which are available for simultaneous use. So if you were really interested in, actually Reader's Digest is a great example, you would be able to read it and then you told your friend, oh, hey, you know, you can get magazines available through the library. You both would be able to, it's not like you have to wait for your friend to be done with the Reader's Digest in order to hand it over to you. It's simultaneous use throughout the network. So anything that you saw in the magazine collection, you would be able to share. And you can also obviously select different issues if you wanted to read a back issue of something. Also with the RB Digital collection, we added a really wide variety of things that weren't previously available on Overdrive as a platform, like the New York Review of Books, for example, being one of them. I think Billboard was another that had previously been owned by a different vendor exclusively, and they've decided to share it with Overdrive, which is great because Overdrive is the largest ebook platform pretty much nationwide. Most large networks like the one that we are in use it, as well as a lot of independent libraries as well. So that's magazines. You can also look for things specifically if you're interested in audiobooks, for example. There's ones that are same thing, simultaneous use, so they're always available. We also have specifically audiobooks that are part of that Lucky Day collection that I was describing earlier. And you could also look at new audiobook editions. The challenge with the new stuff is that they tend to have a very long wait list, but at least it might give you a sense of some of the new stuff that's out. If you happen to be an Ishiguro fan, for example, that's one that I'm actually really looking forward to. Or something that's new and an up-and-comer, like I believe The Lost Apothecary is a debut novel that's gotten a lot of interest. So if you're just looking for something new, it does provide a little bit of that browsing experience that we unfortunately don't have in person right now. And then, as I mentioned, there's also video content here. So why don't we just go to new video? Because there were a whole bunch of things I was really personally very surprised by. Great courses, if anybody's familiar with those. They tend to be DVD or CD collections that basically are effectively college level style classes that are built into your ability to learn asynchronously at home through the DVD or CD format. Those, again, were also owned by RB Digital, and they were able to move those over onto the Overdrive platform. So there's a ton of those. The Art of Public Speaking, Our Night Sky, a lot of really interesting topics, some that are really relevant for people who are trying to learn things in a sort of different pace than the other online learning platforms like lynda.com. So you could learn how to program, for example, and work with Python if you wanted to do that. And then there's also feature films too. I know this one happens to have a lot of documentaries, but if we were to go a couple pages back, there are, you know, some classics like Police Story with Jackie Chan. There's also some sort of like campy B films like the Sharknado films, if that was something you wanted, something lighthearted and goofy to watch. But a lot of really great documentaries too, like Iris, which is by Albert Malices, which is about a very famous, well, let's click on it. I think she's a fashion designer, if memory serves, a filmmaker, sorry. Known for her really robust and colorful clothing, but also does really amazing cinematic work. So there's a lot of documentaries in here as well. So Overdrive's got a lot of really cool things going on. The only limitation here is if you're using Overdrive, then you'll be able to access all of it. If you're using Libby, right now that as an app does not support any of the film stuff that we're looking at right now or any of the video content. There are also a couple of children's options as well. Let me just see if we can see what those are, because those have been pretty popular in the past. Great courses. Yeah, there's Little Pim, which is helpful if kids want to learn a language, for example. No, they used to have this like really awesome thing. You could just click on it and find a lot of Sesame Street, which was nice if you had a, especially during the shutdown. I think a lot of people were spending time with family in different ways, and sometimes you would just wanted to be able to put on a video real quick to be able to share with a grandson or a son or somebody in your household. So that's sort of Overdrive in a nutshell. The one other thing I'll mention too is, in addition, like I said, to the Lucky Day collection here, you will also see it. You won't actually see it, but just know that there are extra copies of items being purchased for Belmont residents only. So right now, not to toot our own horn, but other libraries have to compete with a holds ratio of anywhere from 10 to 1 to 20 to 1. So that's 10 or 20 of patrons just within their municipality or their community that have a really long wait list. And we're currently down to, I think, 3 to 1 is our highest. So if there's something that you're looking for, odds are pretty good that you won't have to wait very long for it, if you have to wait for it at all. And then another fun feature I'll mention, actually, let me see if I can think of one that's maybe not in the system. Shucks. Yeah, here we go, though. If you were to search for something and you didn't find what you were looking for, so you see actual Book Tuesdays with Maurice here, but maybe I was looking for something that's related but not owned. It has this really helpful function that says didn't find what you were looking for down below, and you can recommend a book to be added if you wanted to have the library add it. Those requests come directly to Belmont, if memory serves. They might go to the network first, but if not, then they definitely come to us, in which case we can be responsive based on patron need.
If you are asking for something and you have to wait, normally when we go in person, we receive an email telling us it's now ready for you. Are we going to be told in the same manner?
Yes. Yeah. So you do get an email notification when your holds are ready. There's also, let's go into my account so you'll see. So you'll see I have 2 items that are checked out. I should have at least one more on hold, a couple on hold. So depending on where you are on the hold list, it will say it here, but also it asks for your, when you place a hold, it will ask for your email address to be entered, in which case you'll get an email notification when the book is available for you. You'll also notice on this one here, you're not listening. I'm a big audiobook fan, in case you couldn't tell. Pretty much everything I have going on is audiobooks. And so one of the extra options that they have right now is called redelivery. So I actually received a hold notification for this particular one, You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy. It asked me if I wanted to check it out right there. I already have 2 that I'm listening to, so I wasn't able to, no sense in checking it out right at this moment if I don't have time to listen to it, right? So it will actually ask you to edit the, well, it says edit the hold here, which is fine, but it'll say, do you want me to try redelivering this later? So basically it gives you like a little stopgap where you're only bumped basically one spot down on the hold list for the item. You don't have to then check it out and then place a hold again and go right back on the bottom of the list, which is pretty handy if you know that you're gonna want to listen to it in a couple of weeks, but maybe not in a couple of months, depending on how popular the title is. I did the same for this one down here as well. And also, if you ever needed to, you can also, as it says here, edit the email address that it's going to go to when they'll contact you when the hold is available. So if you just wanted to double check and make sure you got the email address right, you can do that too.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren?
Yep, go ahead, Sally.
Is edit hold the same as reserve?
Not for the edit hold here. Let's click on it and I'll show you. Remember how I was saying that hold redelivery idea? This one was going to give me options basically to change when I want that hold to be redelivered. If you're looking to place a hold immediately on ebooks, your best bet is to I know he has a new book out, so I figure that's the best bet is to go with something we know is checked out. Or even an old one. You'll notice on an ebook, it'll say waitlist up at the top. And if it says waitlist, that means that you're going to place a hold. You can either do that by just clicking on the image here, or you can place a hold here, either way.
Does that work the same for magazines?
For magazines, you don't have to worry about holds because there's no wait list for the magazines.
Well, what if you don't have the magazine? For example, I think there's a magazine for called the Harvard Review or something very similar to that. I don't think the library cover has that. Do you?
Is this for a print? What was the title again?
The Harvard Review, a magazine. I'm not sure if I have the title exactly correct.
That's a great question. Let me look into it for you. I don't know if it's a one that's available as an e-magazine, or if it's one that's in print. If you wanted to check, we can see if that's something that's available through the regular catalog. Let me just, there we go. Yeah, and you're right. Harvard Review is definitely the name. So it looks like Concord definitely gets it. You know what, Sally, this is such a great question. I'm glad that you asked it. So let's say it's a title of something that you don't find it in Overdrive, or you wanted to have the physical copy of something. You would be able to go to the catalog, same way as we did before, right? And search for it. If you go here, home, and go to catalog. The Harvard Review is a good example where we don't own it. Concord does, but let's say there's something in particular you wanted to read the 2020 issue. It looks like it's only issued annually, which maybe that they may or may not they might only hold on to one. That's also a possibility. But let's say there's any magazine that you wanted to see a physical copy of in person. We don't have it, or alternatively, we do have it and you want to place the request online. You can click on the title of the magazine as we have here. And then if you go to request it, it recognizes, oops, sorry, it logged me out. Let me just get logged back in here. And then it actually gives you the option to request specific issue. So let's say you were interested in an older issue of something.
What
Again,
if you're interested in a newer issue?
Yeah, same. Either way. So you would be able to go down to whichever one and you'll see it says periodical and then it'll say the year. Concord seems to be the only one that owns this particular magazine or periodical. And then you'll see the year for 2020, which looks to be the most recent. And then you'll see this little dot right here on the left-hand side. If you select that, it's going to choose that specific issue. It's also really helpful for travel books. If you want to say have the 2019 version of, you know, walking around Boston or something like that, rather than the 2017 version. And then you would just go ahead and submit that request. And then it goes off to either us here in Belmont or to another library with a specific request for that specific issue of the periodical that you're looking for.
And what is the wait time?
Generally speaking, right now, because there are a number of libraries that'll still quarantine items, if it's coming from another library, you should probably expect it to be about 10 business days if it's located elsewhere.
Thank you.
No problem. And if it's something that we have here in Belmont, the turnaround time is much faster, probably closer to about a day or two, because basically it's an in-house list that we run and then are able to go and grab the items depending on the, you know, how busy it is at circulation and when you place the request. If you place it in the morning, you might even get the notice by the afternoon. If you place it overnight, obviously we won't see it until the next day. I saw there were some questions, so I'm just gonna pop over there and see. Oh, yay, Jean, you got a Lucky Day book. Congrats, that's great. If you want to read a particular book in any format. Yeah, oh, so you were asking about like different formats on books. You wanted to see if there's something that's available. Yes, there is. So let's go to the catalog. I know I sort of explained the catalog in ebooks and Overdrive as being separate in terms of delivery. And like if you want to check something out right now, you are better off going through Overdrive for an ebook. However, you are able to see everything that's available as an ebook through the general catalog. So let's do, just because I know we have it in every single possible format. Again, the new Barack Obama book. So you'll see A Promised Land comes up. It tends to err towards the thing that has the most copies. So in this case, it would be the print book because there are 415 copies in the entire network. But if you were interested in an audiobook, they are all listed sort of based on, usually it says relevance, so it's generally popularity. Same is true for a large print. But let's say you don't want to sort through all of them, right? You just want to see, or if you wanted any book on Barack Obama that was available as an audiobook only. We're actually going to find a bunch of stuff because he's probably got books on him about, you know, in the children's sections and in young adults and in reference, all sorts of areas. So this refined section, which we'll call it sort of a facet, is probably your best bet. You can search by a book, and then it will, once you check it off, it will automatically whittle it down just to physical items that are available in a library somewhere in the network. And then below that, you'll see if you wanted to look in a specific collection. Since I'm logged in as a Belmont patron, it knows that I would probably go with a Belmont item. So like, let's say you don't want the children's books, right? Which is perfectly reasonable. you would check the Belmont versus Belmont Children's. And now all of a sudden we're looking at everything that's in print about Barack Obama that is available in Belmont, or Belmont owns a copy of it in print. And that would be the same if you change the format here to something like, there's a bunch of options. So let's do a digital audiobook, let's say, and you hit apply. Interesting. Oh, probably because we still had the Belmont collection on. So then if you did a digital audiobook, you will also see the options that are available in Hoopla, which I know we sort of talked a little bit. So actually this is a great segue. We can go on to exploring Hoopla a little bit.
Well, excuse me, before you leave that topic, maybe I'm getting confused with Amazon's site right now, but do you also have to search separately for Kindle books?
No. Yeah, you're right. That's a funny thing that Amazon does do. Actually, Overdrive does as well, because there's some people who only want to have the Kindle format and read it on their e-reader. Here, you have the option to, and for the most part, I would say that both the network and us as a library has a tendency, as Belmont as a library, has a tendency to buy things that will be available in multiple formats. So you would be able to get an ebook regardless of whether or not you own a Kindle. But if you wanted to make sure that it was available on Kindle format for your e-reader, it will list it. Oh, sorry, let's turn off. It will list ebooks in the catalog here. And then if you also wanted to just see those, so we see ebook here and it says Overdrive, right? Here it says Hoopla. So that's how you kind of know which platform it's on. And then if we go back over here to Overdrive, and actually, hold on, let me take my search content with me. Let's just find one I know is on Overdrive. This happens to be a children's book. Oh, let's do the amateur. You can search for the title that you're looking for. And we would see it available as an audiobook, apparently. Interesting. And it is available. But let's say you only wanted Kindle books. I was surprised. Oh, I guess maybe it was a digital audiobook. But if you were looking for just Kindle books, there is the option at the top to click on Kindle books. So Amazon does the same thing, and actually Overdrive does mimic that in order to make sure that people who want to make sure they can read it on their e-reader and not have it on an app-based device or on their computer, you would be able to find all of those books by just clicking Kindle books at the top. Another helpful...
Oh, yeah. Before you leave, can you click on one of the Kindle books? Because I have a question once you do that.
Do you want to click on one has a wait list, or do you want to do a one that's available?
But basically, what happens when I click on it, you can say borrow a book, and then you get to Amazon, to the Kindle store, and sometimes it takes, I can't quite figure out what buttons I'm supposed to push, because sometimes it takes a few days to actually receive a Kindle book. And so if you hit a Kindle book, let's hit one that's available.
Yeah, I was like, let's go through this process so you can see what's actually, how the process works. So the sort of complicating factor here is Overdrive is its own platform, and they work with Amazon to be able to provide the link to Kindle books, but Amazon owns Kindle as a format, right? So you are always going to have that extra step to get it as a Kindle book. The benefit being, of course, that you can read it on your e-reader. You can also mark things up in a different way, which is kind of handy. You got a lot of other options there. So if we go with, let's go with Opening to Grief. Just again, that's another one that's part of the One Book, One Belmont collection. And you click on Borrow. This one, I guess, is available for, oh, this is probably because it's in the Lucky Day collection. It might give you a different option here for a longer period, right? But let's go with the borrow for 14 days. It is available in other forms. For example, it gives you the option to do an EPUB. The EPUB requires a little bit more work to get it onto a Kindle e-reader.
Could you click on Read Now with Kindle on the top, please?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So if we do that, it's going to then redirect you to Amazon.
Okay, now the question, so sometimes I read now on Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to click on any of these Get Library Book or
yes,
on the right?
Yep. So you want to click on Get Library Book.
Okay.
This would be such a great thing if I had a Kindle handy right here, and I'd be able to show you. What it should do is you would hit Get Library Book. It's going to be delivered to the device, and then you'll see here, this is the thing that's a little tricky about it. It says next time that this particular Kindle syncs. So part of that is that if it's not, let's say you haven't opened it recently, or maybe it's not connected to the internet or what they call the WhisperNet on the Kindle e-readers, it won't be able to download the book. But if there are a couple ways to get around that. Usually there's one at the top menu where you click on the two arrows that go in a circle and have it sync, and sometimes that'll do the trick, and it'll force it to sync and then download the book.
And the other question is, when I finish a book, and this is Kindle again, sometimes I say return it, I'm done, but it never leaves. It never goes away until the time period is up.
Yeah, is that on the Kindle device proper? You mean it says that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no. Usually I go on my laptop to do that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's a frustrating feature of again, that sort of whisper down the lane effect of going through Kindle. If you return it on your ebook account, so like if we were to go in here, for example, and then return this one.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is honestly the most important part, because then what you'll see is that you regain another title if you wanted to borrow another one.
That's fine. Thank you.
How many titles can you borrow at the same time?
Great question. It's 10 titles in total for loans. And I think if you go to holds, you can place 15 holds altogether. There's also some other fun options like a wish list here, which will let you add 5,000 titles to it. This is sort of the place that you can, add all the stuff that you want to read, but you're not ready to place a hold. You don't have time for it right now in this very minute. So that's the benefit of that one. But the holds is relatively, well, it's a little bit higher for sure. And then, the loans is 10. If we were to sorry, I want to switch back to my slides here. If we go to Hoopla, it's a little bit of a different setup. So this is maybe a good opportunity to explore that. Hoopla is a completely separate platform. So the options here are you get 5 titles per month, but you don't have any wait lists for it. So you get fewer borrows, but and the collection is obviously different, but you have the ability to have them all out at the same time if you wanted to. So it also has a music collection, which is not available through Overdrive. So if there was any music that you were interested in, for example, one thing that it recommends pretty much to me all the time for one reason or another is the Hamilton Broadway cast recording, the soundtrack. But you'll also see there's audiobooks, comic collection too, which is not available on Overdrive, if memory serves. There's a handful of illustrated titles, but they're not as common. And then there's also, just gonna move this guy out of the way so I can see what we have here. Television, as I mentioned, and movies. A relatively wide smattering. I would say you're not going to see a lot of the super new content. This last year in particular has thrown everything off because there aren't a lot of movies that came out, period. Right? So you actually might see a couple things that have moved to streaming a little bit faster than you would have expected them. And you might actually find those here now because they've, you know, they never did a theater release in that sort of way that we normally think of going to a movie theater. It's being out for 6 months and then it eventually moves to DVD format. Some things move direct to streaming depending on the popularity of the movie. So for Hoopla, you get 5 checkouts, but it's anything that you want across all of these different formats. So if you wanted to have 2 audiobooks going and a CD out and an ebook, and you found all of them in here, you could have them all out all at the same time. No holds, no hold lists at all with anything in Hoopla. That's great. So Hoopla's, like I said, sort of the other big player that we have for ebooks and audiobooks. If we go to audiobooks too, there's also interestingly, they have the all of the Harry Potter books, which was kind of a big deal for them, on perpetual license, which, you know, means simultaneous use. That's kind of a really big deal because they're pretty popular and have had a lot of staying power. But you'll see there's a whole bunch of other options that are available too, like some recent releases within the last year or two that were popular, like Milkman came out, classics like Agatha Christie, and some fun mysteries like the Leslie Meyer mysteries. So it's got a pretty wide variety of titles. And again, The Lost Apothecary being another great example, a new book that just came out this week maybe. But because it's a debut, it's probably also available on Overdrive if the network has purchased it, and it might have a really long wait list. But here, since it's on Hoopla, you can just go ahead and click borrow and it would be available to you immediately.
Do we have to download an app for Hoopla?
Yeah, for Hoopla you do, unless you're using it on your computer. On your computer, you can just go to the subject guide again. And it's actually in 2 places. So if you go to ebooks and audiobooks, you'll find it there. Or if you went to movies and TV, you'd find it there. If you were on a phone or a tablet, you would want to just search on your app store, whatever that might be, your Google Play or the App Store. Just type in Hoopla, you know, hoop, like a hoop, and then LA at the end. Download it. You want to set up an account, which is pretty much just going to be your email address, a password that you make, and it's probably going to ask for your library card number to set it up. And then it also keeps you logged in on the app, so you don't have to keep logging in and out if you didn't want to. You know, it keeps you logged in, which is kind of handy on the app. You know, it's a bit of a pain to type on tablets and phones. Yeah, thanks, Sally. I know it's a pretty cool thing. Hoopla's got its pluses and its minuses. You know, there's not as many of the high demand items that are available on it, but if you find something that you're looking for, the beauty is that you don't have to wait for it. And the music collection, I will say, I have a tendency to read or listen to a lot of music. It's pretty wide variety. So there's a lot of really interesting music if you just want to try it out and you don't want to have to bother with placing a hold on a CD or anything. You can always just give it a borrow and see what you think. Okay, so those were ebooks. We sort of skipped around on a couple things. Does anybody want to take a look at some of the other like streaming video content? I know we have a couple minutes. Yeah, okay. So the benefit here is we've gone over half of this already, so it makes it a little bit easier. Acorn TV, like I said, we added that in either March or maybe April of 2020. And it's been quite popular. 7 days usage for British television and film. And that also includes sort of I think they generally like to describe it as Commonwealth titles, so things that might be originally filmed in India or areas of Africa that may have been part of the United Kingdom, classically defined. So you'll find maybe a little bit more variety there than you might have originally expected. Hoopla, as we just went over, there's same thing. You get 5 borrows per month of continuous usage. So it's similar to Acorn TV in that way, but it's only 5 borrows per month. But there's a lot of older popular films, a lot of kids' movies, a fair number of documentaries there as well. And then Canopy is the one we haven't actually talked about quite yet. So why don't we click into that and you'll be able to see the interface. I'm already logged in. So it normally, if you were creating an account for the first time, it would just ask you to register, ask for your library card number, email address, and for you to set up a password. And then pretty much whenever you're using it on a computer, it will remember that you're logged in, which is handy. Canopy, one of the things that we did add was 10 borrows per month, upped it from, I think it was either 5 or 7. So you have a really wide variety. Canopy sort of started with its focus being on Indian art house films and documentaries, award-winning documentaries. And I would say that that's still generally the flavor that's available, but you'll see that there are a lot of other things that have been added, and they're always looking to add new content. So the areas on this first page are sort of broken down by newly added at the top, right? Movies, documentaries. Again, a lot of these are award winners. So you'll see oftentimes the little, I always look for like the little, I call them seals of approval, but really they're if they won an award somewhere. I wonder if it'll show us anywhere. It doesn't show it on the front, but a lot of them have been either selections at a film festival, some variety cans, whatever the popular one at the time is pretty much. And then they'll also do curated collections too. So world cinema. So there's, like I said, Indian art house films, a lot of stuff that comes from outside of the US. And then there's also sort of collections, for example, March being Women's History Month, there's notable figures in women's history where they select curated titles there, films that are directed by women. And then also just some fun ones like culinary tours, romance, movies if you wanted to watch something along those. And then it also has this nice thing where it's just recommended for you based on stuff that you've watched in the past. I tend to watch a lot of documentaries personally, so that's probably why half of these are documentaries. And some classics, like The Untold Story of Emmett Lewis Till, I believe came out relatively recently to much acclaim. But then there's other ones like Super Size Me, which is sort of a well-known, or An Inconvenient Truth, a well-known documentary, right, about kind of pressing issues that really stand the test of time. And you can borrow 10 of these a month of anything that's in here. The added benefit too is if anybody happens to have an Amazon Fire Stick or a Roku, it sort of depends on which kind of smart TV that you have. But most of the external devices, you can actually download Canopy as either an app or a channel, log in once, and then you can just always access it on your TV. So you don't actually have to watch all of these on your computer screen if you didn't want to. You would be able to access them all on your regular TV for, a quiet night at the movies on a Friday if you wanted to. I see there's a chat. Yeah, actually, I'm so glad that you asked that. Is it Jean, right? The New York Times articles, that's great. We're going to totally switch gears now. But that is a really great one. And I'm glad you brought it up because I thought somebody might be interested in it. This has been around the New York Times. There's a couple ways to access the New York Times. Let me start there. So if anybody is interested in historical content, again, and actually, sorry, let me restart. If you start from the homepage here, your best bet is to, again, go to that subject guide here. You can also go to the A to Z list, which is available up here in the services area. And then if we scroll down to newspapers and journals, you'll see the historical New York Times, which is going to have anything that's 3 years ago and older, back to 1851. Usually not the thing that everybody really thinks of. There's the New York Times Research Database, which I'm pretty sure we called it that to make it a little bit clearer that the experience would be different than reading the newspaper. I will click into it though, just so you can see. You can search for an article. And I know and if you knew that it was available recently, it will list relatively recent content, and you can also sort by the day. But if you're looking for that, so you could find something that was literally published today through the research database version. If you're looking for that sort of experience of it being the newspaper, right, in the New York Times sort of way, this is the one you're going to want to use, the newyorktimes.com link. So if you click on that, it takes it to a page that we've created that includes the instructions. So you will always be able to follow these instructions, and it'll sort of explain what is and is not available too. So you get, like I said, today's paper. It's a digital edition of the paper, much like you would flip through an actual physical newspaper, as well as, a Chinese version, for example. I think there's a Spanish version, a couple other interesting topics. No full crossword available in the online one, unfortunately, but there is a mini crossword if that's somebody's interest. But basically, you just want to click here where it says redeem. It takes you to this page where you click redeem again. And then it's going to ask you to create an account. I happen to have one. So I'm just going to log in with my personal account. You get 72 hours of access to newyorktimes.com. Right, it'll say your access code is valid. And if you don't already have an account, you can just create one. And then it's going to walk you through, probably because I've never answered these questions, it always asks me, but I'll say maybe later. Because these are all the newsletters that you can receive separately. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. This is to be able to do the app. You can access this through the app, but again, you would have to enter the phone number, all that. Let's say you just want to read it on your computer. Just go to no thanks, back to reading. And pretty much what you see is the digital version of the New York Times for today with all the various areas, right? So if you're really interested in the politics section, you'll see what's going on depending on the topic. I also feel like it's nice because it's not as limited as it would be in print by virtue of it being on a newspaper broadside. You have a little bit more options to break things down. For example, if you wanted to learn about the impeachment situation, or you want to learn a little bit more about what's going on with Joe Biden and his policies, you'd be able to do that. You can always get back to the main page by going up here to the sort of what I call the hamburger, but it's really the menu bar, right? Go to the home page. You'll also see that the magazine is available as well if you're interested in sort of the arts and culture sections, which is very popular. And of course, opinions, tech, science, health, pretty much anything. And if you're looking for the books, which is obviously our bread and butter at the library, you could also read any of the new book reviews. Harlan Coben, anything that's up and coming, and recommendations, which can be handy. I see there's some chat, so I'm just going to switch over to that.
Thinking about the chat and several questions, what you are describing for the New York Times, it's probably, I'm not sure, please answer, available for other magazines or newspapers. If you input the name of that magazine or newspaper. Am I correct?
In terms of the setup of having it read like a digital newspaper, this is a pretty unique situation with the New York Times. So the one that we're looking at right now, the only other one that I'm aware of that's been working on it, and we're in talks with them, is for the Wall Street Journal. I think somebody, oh yeah, so we do have an online subscription to Wall Street Journal. It doesn't look quite like this in the way that it looks like an actual newspaper, but I'm happy to show that if anybody wants to take a look at that. But I know that Wall Street Journal is another one that they are, yes, exactly. It's a great way to bypass the paywall, and be able to access something that sort of has the look and feel of the newspaper historically. That's a great question about the Boston Business Journal. I'm not sure about that one. I can look. Somebody asked if the Boston Business Journal is available. It's possible that it is available through a news bank collection, but I would have to take a look, and I'd be happy to get back to you on that one. And yes, you can repeat renewing every 72 hours. It's 72 hours kind of to the hour, I'm pretty sure. So if it gives you a hard time and it says your time hasn't expired, you know, it might be that you're on the final, the 72nd hour, right, of your 72 hours. If you waited a little bit, it would let you redeem another one that same day once those 72 hours have passed, and you'd get it for another 72 hours or 3 days. Let's take a look at the Wall Street Journal, though. That's a sort of completely different setup. So if you click here, I'm also going to mention that anything that's in the subject guide here, when you first click on it, when you're remote, it will ask for your library card number. It's set up through a proxy system if you're not in the library.
I'm not sure I understood that.
Oh, somebody's Alexa picked up on me, I guess. So if you get that screen that first comes up, it's just because it's looking for the library card number, because it doesn't know where you're located. Once you do, it happens to know that I'm in the library, so that's why everything just clicks through for me. But once you put in that library card number, you would be able to get to any of these options, including the Wall Street Journal. So this one's actually kind of interesting. If you go to publications, there is something that's sort of akin to reading the actual version of the paper. So if publications, it gives you a couple of options. There's the online version, which will read like the website would if you had a paid subscription for it. There's the WSJ, which is the magazine that comes in, which I think is a weekly in the Wall Street Journal. And then there's the Wall Street Journal Eastern Edition, which is the one that we are interested in. And if we click on it, it does give you sort of a sense of what it would look like. And the handy part about this is then it lets you choose the issue right then and there. So you want to read today's Wall Street Journal, it defaults to today rather than having to search for a specific article, which is kind of nice. The only thing that's a little tough is if you know that it's in a particular section, it's basically listed in the same way that it would be found in the newspaper itself. So you have kind of a sense as you're scrolling through, you can tell that these are sort of the first page articles. But then you also see, and it also does give the page numbers. So if you knew that a certain section started on A2, for example, then you would be able to look for those. So it does give you the page numbers. It's, again, not quite exactly the same as reading the newspaper in the same way that the New York Times is, but it does give you that option to sort of drill down onto something. And most of them are also labeled with the area of interest. So if it's world news, you would look there. Or if you were interested in something that was the US news. And then as the newspaper itself is usually organized, you have the travel and entertainment section afterwards, right? Arts, if it happens to be leading up to a weekend, I think. And then usually at the very end, you will see the opinion pieces. Sally, is it 72 hours a month? No, it's 72, just every 72 hours for the New York Times. .com. So you could renew every 72 hours in perpetuity. You would be able to read it literally every single day for the New York Times if you wanted to. I'm glad somebody asked about the Wall Street Journal, though, because that's one that I was like, I wasn't sure what the interest would be. I know that they're working towards something that will look like how the New York Times does in terms of it appearing like a digital newspaper in that same way, which I think we have some interest in for sure. And it's nice to know that people are out there are reading the Wall Street Journal. That's the thing that they're interested in. So I know we're a little over noon, and I don't want to, I don't want to keep anybody, and I'm sure everybody's getting a little glazed over too. So does anybody have any final questions about anything that I can answer? Oh, Miriam, I think you're muted.
I was wondering if you had any idea of when the library would reopen for in-person use.
So we are going to be discussing it later today. For the department heads, there's 4 of us, 4 different departments, and then Peter, who's the director. We will be discussing. The plans are that generally, I think we'll expect to have in-person usage of computers and pickup service in April. And probably early April. So we're definitely talking about it. It may be more than that. It may be, but it certainly won't be less than that. Let me put it to you that way.
I have a friend who's interested in an item that's only available in the Belmont room. So I was wondering if that would get included in the limited opening.
That's a great question. The Claflin room is run by the Historical Society. So let me reach to them and find out. I know that at one point in the fall that they were interested in being able to open limited hours. So I can certainly find out for you and either reach back through Pat or otherwise.
Why don't you give, Miriam, why don't you give Lauren your email address and then it'll be sent to your email?
All right,
your
I'll put it in, I'll put my email address in the chat.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that way you can get you back with the right information.
Lauren, you've given us extra time and we really appreciate it. I think we probably ought to be finishing up. Does anyone have a last minute question?
No, thank you very much for everything.
Yes, thank you, Lauren.
It's quite informative.
Appreciate it.
Well, I'm so glad. I think I said this to Pat at one point. I could talk about the library for hours. So if you ever have any other questions, I know we skipped around a bunch too. There are some instructional videos that are online, but you can also always reach out to me. And I'm just gonna put my final info up there. So if anybody is interested, there's the phone number. That's my direct email address. You can also go through the reference desk and they'll be able to send you my way as well if you had any questions. Also, obviously the reference desk is more than happy to answer these things too. But if it's something that you wanted to refer to from today that maybe needed a little bit more follow-up, I'm happy to help. So you don't have to explain it to somebody new, all over again.
In order to keep what you just put online, I'm not quite sure how to save it. What you just wrote, that you shared on your screen, I tried to highlight, it doesn't work.
Nicole, are you talking about the screen with her contact information?
Yes.
I just did a screenshot, so I can email that to
I
you.
could do that. Oh, thank you very much.
Also, if it's helpful, I'd be happy to send the slides if anybody wants to be able to revisit any of this information.